There's a popular maxim which is that if a headline has a question mark, the answer to the question is usually no. And that certainly holds true in today's video, in which I'm going to talk about the popular urban legend that there is a secret underground station at Buckingham Palace. The truth is, there is almost certainly not a Buckingham Palace tube station. But there's a little more to it than that. Let's look into how plausible this story is. Now, there are plenty of stations serving Buck Palace. St James's Park, Green Park or Victoria are all nearby. There has never been an official station for Buckingham Palace, or Bucky P as the kids call it. Still, the rumour that never quite seems to die is that there is an unofficial station, or possibly an unofficial spur off one of the existing lines. The version of the theory that I hear most often is that it's an emergency escape route for the royal family in the event of nuclear war to enable them to flee the country. There is another version that says that it's just a means for them to get around the network in secret. Now, that latter part we can dismiss because it would be impossible to keep that a secret, for the simple reason that they'd need to close the station at the other end, and all the lines between Buckingham Palace and the destination. It would be very obvious what was going on, so that's clearly not the case. How about the concept of a secret station for emergency use? On the face of it, it seems surprisingly plausible. The Victoria line runs under the palace. Seems like a pretty good place for a hidden station, n'est-ce pas? Actually, I wonder if that's the origin of the rumour. Just a thought. Secret stations sound ridiculous, but something similar to our theoretical station actually did exist during the Second World War, and in fact it was very near to Buckingham Palace. Down Street Station was an abandoned station on the Piccadilly line, closed in the 1930s due to a lack of demand and a need for modernisation. During the Second World War it was fitted out as an underground headquarters for the railway executive. Prime Minister Winston Churchill also took shelter down there, albeit rather reluctantly, and for a pretty brief period. Naturally, this was not something they advertised at the time. The old platforms were bricked up, making them almost invisible to passengers. There were doorways out, though, and if a minister wanted to get home, they could flag a train down with a lamp and hide in the cab to maintain secrecy. So that proves that secret tube stations are not completely implausible. Or at least they weren't, back in the day. Even now we don't know the full details of what went down at Down Street. The concept of a secret spur off one of the existing lines is a little harder to swallow. The problem is that every extra bit of track requires points, signals, power and communications. And you usually have to have a train running up and down it every so often to keep everything in order. All of that has to work with the rest of the line. So it would have to be known to underground staff and engineers, not to mention being visible to maintenance staff and even passengers. Our imaginary spur would have to be very well concealed. Much of this would also be the case with our Victoria Line station, but as I say, it's just a bit easier if all you're doing is adding a couple of tiny platforms next to an existing route. The next question is, where does our imaginary train go? The usual answer is Heathrow Airport, which HM can use to flee the country. The trouble is that neither the Victoria Line nor the District Line goes to Heathrow Airport. The only tube line to Heathrow Airport is the Piccadilly line, unless you count the Elizabeth line, which we will not. If we say that our station is on the Victoria line, then our train would have to go up to Finsbury Park, where there is a physical connection between the Piccadilly and Victoria lines. This is not very efficient. Remember, this is an emergency route. It's the Cold War. The Reds have pressed the button. Every second counts. Heading right up to North London, only to head down again to West London, seems ridiculously long-winded. Perhaps we could imagine a secret connection between the two lines at Green Park, but I always think that the more you have to invent to make a theory work, the less plausible it is. All in all, though, if the Soviets mistook a red balloon for a nuclear attack, or an insane general sent a bomber into Russian territory to protect our precious bodily fluids or whatever, if the Cold War turned hot, It would be far easier for the royals to just be evacuated by helicopter. Far less hassle. That being said, there was a plan to get important people out of London by rail in the event of a nuclear war, but not from Buckingham Palace. Down in Wiltshire, a nuclear bomb-proof citadel codenamed Burlington was constructed during the Cold War. Well, it was known by other code names too, but that's not important right now. It was built into an underground quarry leading off Box Tunnel and intended to protect the government. Should war have broken out, government officials designated to survive would be bussed to Kensington Olympia Station, where they would board a train apparently going to Taunton. It was not going to Taunton, that was a clever ruse to put the enemy off the scent. It would in fact go to Warminster, where buses would take them on the last leg of the journey to Burlington. The bunker has since been decommissioned. But here's the thing, we know about it. Its existence was leaked during the Cold War. And that, I think, is the biggest tell that there is no secret tube station. Someone would know about it. And I don't mean your Uncle Stanley who met a guy down the pub who says he used to work for London Transport back in the 70s, and he'll have a Stella if you're buying. I'm not talking about rumours and hearsay. Down Street was known about, at least to staff. There was a secret communications bunker built under Chancery Lane Station during the Second World War, and we know about that. There was a nuke-hardened flood control room built under the unfinished North End tube station, and we know about that. These things were known about during the Cold War, even if the details weren't. There are bunkers under Westminster today. Not the tube station, despite rumours. And again, we know they are there. London is as busy underground as it is on the surface. A secret tube station would have to show up in documentation somewhere, if only as a blank space to be avoided by utility companies. It would be dreadful if your top-secret citadel was compromised by Thames Water digging up the road. So, in conclusion, despite many rumours, it is almost certain that there is no secret tube station at Buckingham Palace. Of course, this whole video could just be a ruse, and I could be a puppet of the deep state trying to gull you into believing there's not a station down there. I'll let you judge for yourself. At least a secret tube station is less harmful than some conspiracy theories that have reached mainstream attention in recent years. One footnote to all this. I googled the question of the secret Buckingham Palace station to see how widespread the belief in it was. What I found was that not that many people seemed to actually believe in it, but a lot of people were curious about its existence. They seemed to at least think it was plausible, even if they weren't believers per se. But more worryingly, I found an AI summary which told me that actually, yes, there is a secret Buckingham Palace tube station. When I looked into this in a bit more depth, it turns out that what this fool robot had done was scraped an Ian Visits blog entry from April the 1st. I consider Ian Visits to be a usually reliable and informative blog. This was a joke entry, openly so. But of course, the clanker in question had no sense of humour and couldn't differentiate between this and any other entry. Yet another reason not to trust generative AI for your information gathering needs, but you probably knew that anyway. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this conspiratorial tale from the tube. If so, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the mysterious blank patch to my map. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.